So I'm going to make a confession. When I was a kid, I murdered an eggplant. This is a true story. I walked into the kitchen, and I was confronted with this eggplant on the counter, big purple shiny eggplant. I hated eggplant. And I knew, really more specifically, I hated the way my mother cooked eggplant. And I knew that's what was coming for dinner. So in a moment of passion, I took the eggplant from the counter and I took it to our front hallway and I stuffed it in a big rubber boot, solving my problem of eggplant for dinner. And I go back into the kitchen and my mother is muttering to herself, okay, I just bought the eggplant. I put it on the counter. I was going to make it for dinner. Where could it have possibly gone? She searches the fridge. She searches the car. She calls in my big brother, always the culprit. And he denies stealing the eggplant, doesn't ever think it could be me. So she's decided the eggplant got left out of the groceries. And then she's convinced herself that a whole bag of groceries has been left out of the car when they loaded her up, and she goes off to the store to make things right. I realize at this point I am in way over my head. So I go to the front closet, I get the eggplant, and do I put it back on the kitchen counter when I have the chance? No, my passion for this thing runs so deep. I take it to the backyard and I bury it in the sand pile. You know, it gets better. Then my little brother comes out and starts digging in the sand pile. And I realize, okay, he's going to unearth this eggplant. I'm going to be in a world of hurt, but I'm committed at this point. So I take the eggplant out to the street in front of the house and I put it behind the tire of a car parked 2 doors down, ostensibly murdering the eggplant. But I had solved my problem until I come back into the house where my mother has returned from the grocery store without the phantom bag of groceries that didn't get left out of her car, but with not 1 but 2 eggplants that the grocer had given her for her trouble. Clearly a formative moment of my life. Because at that moment I realized my actions had impact, that I had done this. I had worked just off passion, pure impulse. I had not looked down the road to see what could possibly have happened, and that ripple effect we hear so much about had turned into ricochet, and I ended up with eggplant on my plate that night and every night for a week, which I think is my mother's way of dealing with that particular issue. And so, excuse me, so I'm here, older and wiser, to make a case for using your head. Because in addition to your heart, your head is the key component in creating lasting, positive social change. So if you're going to be an activist, be a smart one. Inform yourself. Because action without information can do more harm than good. And okay, now I said the word activist and you're looking around going, ooh, who's an activist here? But you are here today after all. And activism isn't just big political rallies or petitions to sign. You know, those are good examples and tools for expressions of collective activism. But activism really is those larger choruses made up of singular voices, our voices. And that begins with personal choice. So as you do your homework and you really research the reasons you care about something, you connect your heart to your head. And you not only deepen your empathy, you broaden your understanding and your awareness about whatever the issue is that moves you. And you become an invaluable advocate. And if need be, you can become a more formidable adversary. I run an organization called the Nobelity Project, and we are passionate about global education issues. But with information, my voice is so much more effective. And really more importantly, my actions are more constructive. Because you can build on information. You can build an organization. You can build relationships. You can build an argument. But you can also build a path with steps to your intended outcome. Because it can't all be about, just getting rid of the eggplant. I think sometimes we really need that path because I hear, in this country especially, that people say, I'm not going to win that race, so I'm not even going to run it. But really, sometimes the race is all you get. I mean, I would love to think that I would live to see that global educational equity, but that is highly unlikely to happen in my lifetime. So do I still bother? Is it still worth all this work? For me, absolutely. In part because I've done my homework and I've identified a need where I can make a difference. And even if I'm just moving the needle in inches, that's still winning. One of our programs is about deforestation, global deforestation. So that doesn't get a lot of ink in this country, right? But you probably have an image in your head of what that means. So take a look at this slide. And this depicts tree loss in the US since the colonies to the present. It's startling, right? So with this piece of information, I may have your attention on this issue in a different way than I did before, right? So it is my job as an activist to get to your heart. But it's my responsibility to go through your head. Because if you just go straight for the heart, you can get that ricochet effect. And you can get an emotional backlash that can do more harm than good. And if I can't actually move you with the truth, I haven't really earned your support. And so today we're talking about connections. Connecting your heart to your head to me is critical, because then you get to use these and do something really constructive. But how do you fix a problem this big? One of our, excuse me, oops, there we go. One of the ways we look at it is to look at a big picture and seek a small solution. What can one person do? What can these two hands do? And at the risk of sounding a little lofty, I'm going to quote Mother Teresa, because she said, "I don't do great things. I do small things with great love." So we plant trees. And tree by tree, one tree at a time, we have now planted over 500,000 trees in Kenya, Mexico, and half of those actually right here in Texas in the Bastrop State Park, with shovels in the hands of thousands of high school students, maybe even some of you. We like to say local acts have global impacts. Much of our work is in rural Kenya, and we work with partners there on the ground with the communities to bridge gaps so they can bring an education to their children. We, again, we'll look at a big picture, and we look for small solutions. The communities identify their need, we supply solutions, and together we take this step. And these are bigger steps, and we can see our impact. But the process is the same. The connections are there, heart to head to hands. Last time I was in Kenya, it had been quite cold. We work at high elevations. And I came out of my room, and I saw this moth on the ground. And I picked up its little frozen body, and I was showing Turk, and he took this picture, and while I was holding the moth, I could feel its little furry feet start to tickle and wiggle. And I realized what little warmth was in my hands at that moment was enough. And soon the moth revived and flew away. But I had gotten so much more from that moth in that moment than I think it had gotten from me, because I knew in my heart that no act was too small to matter. That when we reach out with whatever it is we have to offer, our hands come back more than full. So I urge you to run the race, to use your heart and your head. Do small things with great love, because everything moves the needle. Thanks.